Hello, everyone, and welcome to Canadians with Disabilities and their Allies. My name is Brent Frain. I'm the host, and the show is also known as PWD Allies Podcast. Check it out on Spotify or your app store, wherever you find a podcast suitable for you. Today is Disability Stories Health, and the segment is number 2. It's a series that we're doing, and we're talking about health with PWD across Canada, how it affects your life, and we're going to be talking about a lot of different aspects today, talking about food, maybe related to your health. There's lots to dive into. And thank you to all the panelists today for joining into me. First of all, before we actually start, I'm going to pass the mic over to Neil because he has a very, very important announcement to make. And then we'll jump to our panelists.
I was gonna say too, it felt like we had like half a podcast before we even launched the show. So it was kind of fun. But yeah, we have Dan who's in chat right now, and he was gonna be on the show today, but he's got a lot of construction going on around his place. He says it's really, really loud, so he can't even hear himself think. So he wasn't able to come on today. If he was going to be on today, I was going to let him do the announcement, but because he's not able to come on today, I'm going to be the one doing the announcement.
Okay.
And so what it is on Friday, we're going to have Mike Schreiner, MPP Mike Schreiner. He's the Green MPP for the Toronto area. It's cool because we've actually never had a provincial government member from Ontario. We've had I should say we've had Cheryl Hardcastle, and we've had Mike Maurice, but those are federal, right?
Right.
We've actually never had a provincial. Anybody from provincial government. This will be the first time somebody from the Ontario Toronto region coming on, and so it's really cool. And why it's cool, why I wished it was going to be Dan saying all of this announcement, is because he's going to be joining us. It's still going to be a closed circuit show, so we're not going to have like everybody here. It's just going to be you and me, Brent, and Dan, and then Mike Schreiner. And the reason why we thought we'd have Mike on is he's kind of an extra body to represent the quota for Toronto, and that he has also the lived experience of the homelessness and everything in the Toronto area. So we really thought that it would be cool to have
wonderful to have him on.
Well, Dan on, and it'll be a great show. Looking forward to it.
Well, Mike Schreiner really put Dougie against the wall during that last English debate when the last election was. I mean, like, Mike Schreiner had him right up against for the lack of using a hockey term, he was like, poor Doug Ford was sweating against the back wall kind of thing. I mean, he was mumbling and stuttering and flipping pages, and because you're not supposed to have any paperwork or any notes to go by. Like during the debate, you're supposed to be able to completely wing it on your
Mhm.
with being on top of your feet, kind of thing, whatever.
Oh,
Yeah.
And poor Doug was like, like
oh,
you
Yeah.
could
geez.
see him fluttering through notes, and Mike was just hammering him. And I think if
Quite,
Andrew,
quite the advocate.
and I think if it wasn't for Andrew Horvath and the liberal guy for arguing so much on the sidelines, if they had all realized what Mike Schreiner was up to and started attacking Board instead of
Would have been a
fighting,
different
bickering,
outcome.
oh, it
Yeah.
would have been the election would have been a total different outcome. But what people saw was they just saw four adults who were not being adults, except
Mm,
for one, which was Mike Schreiner, who was going issue by issue,
Mhm.
and the other three were fumbling around, including Doug.
See,
Yeah.
a lot of
And
people.
that was the public outcome, and that's probably what led to the lack of people going to vote because they saw it as a
oh, okay.
circus. I think a lot of people watched that last English election with Doug Ward and Mike Schreiner and Andrew Horvath, and I forget the other guy's name, the liberal guy. He stepped down when the liberals didn't get enough seats to form.
Well, it'd be very
Mhm.
interesting once we get Mike onto the show, and we can talk
Yeah,
a lot of that
I,
stuff. But we
What?
should really get onto the
Well,
health.
one last thing I was going to say, I forgot, is when we have Mike Schreiner on, it'll be a pre-recorded thing.
Okay.
So that's one thing that's going to be different. Like normally we like to do things live, but
Mhm.
but because it's going to be pre-recorded, people are going to say, well, where can I tune in to see it and to comment on it? I mean, they'll still be able to comment on it, but it won't be live. So there will be no live chat. So
Right.
basically, what's going to happen is, like I said, it's a closed set. We're going to do the recording, and then I'll just after we're done the interview, I'll just put it up there, and then once it's up there, then people can comment on it. But there'll be no.
If you premiere it on the channel, that's a live chat
Well,
on the
yeah,
day it's scheduled to publish.
Yeah.
that's true. I could premiere it, but I haven't done that. I've never done that yet.
Yeah. Well, the
I
nice
Just-
thing about
you
that
just
is
schedule it. You schedule, so
I
you
could.
record
I
it,
could.
you
Mhm.
schedule it on whatever day that it's supposed to be there. The
Sure.
premiere is a live chat, and then right after it's done, it's instantly people comment in the comments.
Yeah.
That's
Mhm.
true. I could do that. I haven't done
Yeah.
that yet, but I could. I
Yeah.
might try. I might try that.
So,
will
yeah,
Yeah,
see.
I
but
do.
it's
I
good.
do a lot of live chatting. I've got a live chat community on one of our local Alberta podcasts.
Yeah.
That and even on the pre-recorded ones that they schedule
Mhm.
like that. I mean, we have quite a lively conversation in it, and it gets brought up in later episodes, like things that were commented on sometimes
Okay.
too.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
well, today's episode, I really encourage anyone who's tuning in live today, definitely to send your comments in about health aspects to do with Canadians with disabilities across Canada, across our beautiful country. I mean, economically, I would differ with how beautiful that is, especially with how the economy is affecting Canadians with disabilities, their lives. I know in British Columbia, just to kind of set the topic off on this, and then we'll dive into the health aspects of it. So just recently, February 22nd, 2024, wow, we're already into March already. Wow, time flies. But people's lives don't get put on hold when there's nothing in the BC budget for British Columbians with disabilities. Over $8 billion in deficit, but they couldn't squeeze just a little bit out of that to give the people a rate increase in their for on their checks. And that's why, again, I strongly think that, a basic income or any kind of form of that is what's needed going forward. Because these systems are so archaic. They're designed to keep people suppressed down in poverty. We need to eradicate poverty. We need to get rid of it. But here's the icing on the cake, though. And I know, Tom, I sent that over to you too. That was from the CCPA. They posted out that the ministry, who's in charge of British Columbians with disabilities, I'm not sure if Ontario is going to copy that same model. I really hope they don't, because they basically gave the ministry all the money, right, to keep the status quo, saying, hey, we're maintaining that level, but we're not going to give it to the recipients, but we're going to, because the caseloads become greater. But it tells me that more people are actually getting onto the system. Well, when they're getting on the system, is that reducing poverty, or is that actually increasing poverty?
It's increasing poverty.
They're actually doing it the opposite, right? Cost of living is going up. And the latest thing I heard, and Jeff's going to be talking more about this because he had a meeting recently with the Minister of Social Development and Poverty Reduction. He called me up. Neil knows a little bit of the FYI information on this, but I'll be leading up to Jeff to kind of make that media announcement. But there's a little bit more that meets the eye when it comes to why the rates weren't increased. I'll give you a little hint. Jobs plan.
I have some comments about the BC.
He's really ticked off, actually, to say the least.
Just give him a job. It fixes everything.
Here's the other quick thing, and then I'll pass it right over to you, Cassandra. Is that he'll get more into that part about it. But there was something about the Canada Disability Benefit. Why that the provincial governments are not increasing the rates? They're waiting on that Canada Disability Benefit to get released by the federal government. Now, as we all know, the regulations, it's in that regulation stage right now, and they have until next year, June of 2025, to get it done. And then maybe they'll get the funding out. How ironic is that there's a federal election next year? That's when it's scheduled. I know. So anyway, as you know, you're probably reading into it thinking, okay, well, where is he going with this? Is that there's that delay tactic. And now it's like saying, but here's the part is that clawbacks. The minister is not going to commit to no clawbacks on the provincial part from the federal. So when the feds do come out with it, even if they escalate it, the province, BC, will not commit to not clawing it back. Jeff said, are you going to guarantee? I can't commit to that, Jeff.
Yeah,
so he will dive into more of that part.
BC has an issue with parties calling themselves certain things and not being those things. It's like you had something called a Liberal Party that was actually a Conservative Party, and now you've got an NDP, which is arguably more closer to Liberal, and in some cases, their strategies are very reminiscent of some of our kind of really right wing people out here in Alberta, and even then, we put enough public pressure that we got them to re-index us to inflation and finally change our dates back to what they were, because they had changed them to fix the books. But they still gave us less than what our NDP government had it got in would have given us. But even then, it's not enough. And when I listen to EB, when I listen to Malcolmson, when I listen to all those people, I get pissed off because I'm thinking, you call yourselves New Democrats, you call yourself Social Democrats, but you don't, your policies don't live up to that. Your fiscal policy doesn't live up to that. NDP governments are more typically very fiscally conservative in a lot of ways. A lot of people like to say they do, but they spend in a way that invests in things that actually make the economy grow rather than investing. But this is not since Horgan got in, and EB's been a bit of an improvement, but it's still not an improvement when you call it. I don't know how you can sit there knowing that your cost of living is what it is, and you're giving somebody 50% of the cost of what it costs to rent a 1-bedroom apartment to live on. And your excuse is you're waiting for the feds to kick in, and then you're not gonna. Because I mean, they said the average was 2,700 for averaged out 2,700, and you're getting 1,495, and
and that's why it has a huge impact on people's health, right? And that's when you don't raise the rates or even tie it to at least the most minimum is tying it to inflation. I mean, COLA.
I don't know how you can call yourself a Democratic Socialist Party though, and dump on the most vulnerable and refuse to bring them up to. I mean, you should be brought up to at least what Alberta's at, if not more, based on the cost of living.
Exactly.
And the price of a rental. I mean, we need
my
to be
gosh.
higher for the price. I can't get an apartment that I can afford, a 1 bedroom that I can afford on what I'm getting in Alberta. Our cost of living is almost equal right now. And you're also allowed to earn less. That's the other thing. Like they talk about work. You're only allowed to 15,000 extra a year. That's just a little over 1,000 a month. That you're allowed to make. I can make up to, so if my first 1,072 is 100% exempt, and then every dollar after that up to 2009 is 50%, meaning that I can actually take in over $3,000 a month with part-time work and my AISH without, I mean, I think if I make the maximum $2,009, I think I only get about $450 deducted off my $2,000 check. And you know what I mean? And I get 2,000 because I have a special diet allowance and stuff. But the point is that I don't know how, like the BC NDP really pisses me off because I keep them, they're like, oh, we're social no, you're not. You're instilling policies that are more liberal or and in some cases even more conservative than social democratic.
One of my neighbors basically told me this morning that she looked at the budget. She says, I'm really shocked that they didn't give people with disabilities anything in the budget, not even the word poverty, nothing. And she says, I give it an F. I'm like, wow. And she said, yeah, a huge F.
I think it's a human rights issue. Not a human rights. I think it's a charter issue.
I know that MJ has had us hand up, and then we'll go to Tom. But MJ, you can go ahead.
Thanks, Tim.
See, this is why I thought of, when I was thinking of the idea for UAVI, this is why I thought of $4,000 is because, you're going to claw back? Fine. They don't need you anymore. Have a nice day. Right? Yeah. Go blank yourself. Have a, all of a sudden now your workers are just going to be sitting there with their thumbs up their rears looking for something to do. And they're going to find, well, geez, we got to get rid of these people because they won't be needed. Because see, the problem we have is in the truth of all of this is while they keep trying to go and create all these programs, they all keep creating half measure programs or quarter measure programs that only do just enough to keep you screwed. Right. And this is why I decided at $4,000 that, yes, it'll move people that are in poverty up to a level, and then it'll help the people that are disabled to not have to deal with terms and conditions and begging for forgiveness. And, I need to be able to go out of the province to help look after somebody for a month or two. No, you lose your disability. Have a nice day. No, none of that stuff on what I'm suggesting, because, you could move anywhere in Canada and be fine. Right. This is the problem we have with all these programs is they're designed to keep you captured into a certain geographic area that becomes more and more expensive and you can't get out.
Well, right? and it goes against our freedom. It denies you the freedom of mobility that's guaranteed to you under the charter. Like, a lot of people, when they hear me talk charter challenge, they think I'm talking about specifically about the amount of money or this and that, but it's actually the way the programs are designed that they're designed to actually block us from other charter rights that were guaranteed under the charter, like freedom of mobility and other things. So yeah, good point.
That is one of the segments that we're going to be doing weeks down the road after the health segment. We'll be up to the health segment. We got one more health segment to do. That's next week on March the 11th. I have a friend of mine. I'm hoping I touched base with him last night, but he hasn't got back to me yet. But Neil knows about who that person will be coming on, hopefully, and he's actually a student. He's actually going to university right now to be a registered nurse. So I think it's really important from his perspective, what he sees from the health aspect, and he'll dive into this, what he sees, what's going on, and the impacts that people in poverty, how the government's, decision making, and I'll call it decision making. It's about choices, right? I always remember a former premier, you used to run with that comment. It's all about choices. I mean, and I thought, so you're saying choices in what? The government's deciding that who gets poverty, who doesn't? I mean, and that's why I was kind of stuck in my mind, but I mean, it could be wrong, but is it that clean?
Well, and disability is a health issue, right? Like seriously, we're treated like it's an income support issue, and in some ways, yes, the income support's part of it, but it's a health issue, and by not giving people enough to live off of, you're impacting their health even more acutely. Like if you already got chronic conditions and you can't afford to get the medical care you need or eat the right food that you need to eat, because
if you don't have a doctor.
I'm living on the 6th floor of this building. I don't have a balcony, and that's fine. I can cope with that. But right outside my door is a fire door. Right? It's like a glass fire door. And people come through my floor at all hours of the night. Sometimes it's a delivery guy. Sometimes it's just a tenant in the building. But they're loud. The fire door slams. Every time I'm woken up almost every 4 hours throughout the night, whether I wear my hearing devices or not. It's like my sleep is so chopped up like little dog.
Well, yes, and that will definitely affect your health big time, Ellen. I'm going to be diving into that with you in just a few moments. So I'm going to pass it over to over to Tom here.
Tom first, yeah.
I know Tom's been kind of waiting very patiently too.
Yeah. One thing, don't get a Logi webcam. They're insane. The thing's been rattling off.
I know.
It starts rattling, you know where that's coming from. It was something that a fellow NDP premier who used to be a reporter named Wab Kinew said a long time ago in a conversation with George I can't say his last name. George Stroumboulopoulos or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm probably butchering it. I probably am.
Stroumboulopoulos.
Thank you. Which is that when you take a group of people and separate them out from everyone else, that never works out. And of course, he was talking about First Nations, but it's the same thing that Guy talks about with the neoliberal utilitarian movement of majoritivism, where it's like you're focusing on, like Trudeau would say, the middle class and those looking to join them. And so they get all the benefits and everyone else is just forgotten. And that's just what happens here. And you see, like Sonia Persono attacked the NDP in the one that you shared with me, Brent. And one of the things I caught at the end, which is referring to what Cassandra was saying, was how they literally signed off, yeah, it's fine, on the subject of REITs. Like when it came to REITs, like, you know, what are we going to do about it? They just went, no. And I'm like, meanwhile, the NDP was formed on a party that had the Winnipeg Manifesto that would make Karl Marx blush. Like, it was so left wing. It's like they're no longer there, and nobody wants to say that S word. Oh no! So it's like they're moving more and more in the direction of everybody else. I just saw this morning in London, the Labour Party, which is their equivalent of the Liberal Party, is going to move towards more means testing and more, you know, the jobs thing and so forth. Which it's just the same thing. It's the same thing that put everyone in the situation. While jobs are continuing to change, it's like Milton Friedman said, as such a communist as him, saying, if you want to create jobs, cancel the tractor and give everyone spoons. Like, you know, like there's like, we need to create a human-centered economy first. People will still work. We saw this during the pandemic, not the stuff that everyone claims happened during the pandemic, but how people started doing this and doing that. And we were talking about the gardening thing before. People started getting into that. The classic was baking sourdough. But it's like, we are not, like, we wouldn't be here in the world that we have if all of us were just like, I have enough money and I'm just going to lie that. And, you know, we're not like that as as a human species. There's a book that I'm going to be getting when I get past my visa interest moment. Guys recommended it for years. Hannah Arendt's The Human Condition. And as he always says, when people say, you know, people would be lazy with a basic income, it's like, that's an insult to the human condition. And I completely agree. What else did I have? Let's see. And
I completely agree with everything you just said.
Thank you.
Totally.
One more little bit, which is like talking about what we were talking about before, like going after sanctions, going after these attacks on rights. We need, Right now, I'm working on a script based on what happened in the Madhya Pradesh 2010 to 2013 basic income pilot. And what they did was they had the control group villages and the basic income villages, and split in half in both was villages that had SEWA, the Self-Employed Women's Association. It was a labor association for the informal economy. Half were SEWA not getting it, half were SEWA getting it. And of course, the best effects were the people who had basic income as well as collective voice. And that's where you have people who can help with charter rights, and you work together and you make sure that, hey, wait, you're not allowed to grow tomatoes. Okay, we're down on those guys. Like, you have all these things that need to be taken care of, as well as the money as well. And then you fight for the other things that also need to be there. So if a person can't work, it's not like, I mean, after what happened, obviously, to my late loved one, thinking about the phrase useless eaters makes me want to put my fist to a wall. Like, you know, it's like,
Right.
we need to move away from that kind of mentality where jobs become a fetish. Like Eleanor Ostrom said, never look for panaceas. Basic income as well as jobs. Like, people will still work, but work has many different forms, whether it's work in the commons, work in care, or working for a wage, which when you have your floor, you can decide, what work do I want to do? And it all becomes fine. Like, it doesn't put employers off the hook.
Well, it makes more entrepreneurs too. I think that was part of it too. Yeah.
The first pilot they did in Namibia before the Bangladesh pilot, entrepreneurship jumped up 301%.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like,
that's huge.
that's what I've been saying. Like, it's like when you read this stuff, like, I'm going to have to actually put it on my board in my little office there. I'm going to put it on my board and have all the things, because I can't actually remember all the things that improved in Bangladesh. There's so many, like, across the board. And
It
health
improves
is
people's health
over
big
and over
time
and over.
too.
Yeah.
Their well-being, right? It really enhances person's well-being. It gives them a
Yeah.
feeling of belonging to the community.
Human beings like to be
Yeah.
productive.
Yeah.
They like to. We like to feel productive. We like to feel, regardless of our socioeconomic status.
Yeah.
People want to be valued. And they
Yeah.
want to be productive. It is human nature.
I
And
just
anyway,
wanted-
when you
I
make
just
it
wanted to
right,
move-
it's more protected. Like, that's what they're in Alaska with the Alaska Permanent Fund. When it's like, it's for these people over here, then it's like, well, why are they those people over there? When did you make it to everyone as a right that everyone has, or they have access to it, or whatever? Then it's like, hey, that's a right. You know, it's defended by everyone. It's for everyone. It's like our healthcare system. It's like, you know, like who wants, like you saw in England with the NHS, where like they're defending the NHS and trying to keep it from going to privatization.
Yeah,
like
rather than dividing.
No, you know, because it's
dividing people. They use they think that's why the pink unicorns come in, because they dividing, right?
We do have hands up, so I just wanted to keep it moving along here. So we'll go to Minnie now, and then we'll go to MG after Minnie.
Thanks, Tim.
Okay, so we're roughly still on topic, because as Tom is on his rant about work and the meaning of work, did you read 2 books? So there's Why We Work by Barry Schwartz, and then The Importance of Work and Age of Uncertainty by David Bluestein, because my college essay was on the psychological impact of work. And it was just every industrial system, so from sex work to the Industrial Revolution, how we went from factories to technology. We are designed to work, but we're also still a capitalist society. That's not going anywhere. Like, I wouldn't be born if we didn't have colonialism and then capitalism, because my family's British, Indian, African, Chinese, German, Scottish. You realize I wouldn't exist if we didn't have the fucked up system that we have right now. Like, I literally wouldn't be here. I wouldn't make the money I make. I wouldn't do the things because of my family heritage. England moving to Jamaica, colonizing everything in Jamaica, and moving it across the entire world. So work is never going to go anywhere. And every disability system across the world wants people to work in some capacity. And if you can't, you literally have to prove you're disabled for life every time you're on the system. So if disability is your income support, you have to send in documents, send in notes, send in income reports constantly that you cannot work. Like right now, it's March 1st. That means everyone's declaring if they left Ontario for ODSP right now. And then on top of that, I have to make sure I report my income report for the 7th of the month for my business for last month. Like, our system is designed is never going to go away. From reading the Auditor General report, that 62-page document that's embedded in my brain, they want you to work. The recommendations they made in the follow-up report, they want people to work. They want to review people's assets. They want to know how disabled are you. They want to know if you're so disabled that you did not take the new treatment advancements in your condition. They have everything in that document.
Jeez.
And then if they like my vitamin D is not covered. If I get vitamin D prescription, it's a business expense or medical expense on my tax return. If I buy vitamin D over the counter from Life Brand or whatever, Rexall or whoever sells vitamin D in enough units that I get the prescription that the doctor recommended, it's not a business expense. It's not a medical expense. It's in the tax code. It's in everything we have. So either we get used to it and maximize it, or we complain until everyone dies off and we make a new system.
Wow.
I just want to make one brief comment. I agree with you to a point, because I do think that I think there's a question. I don't think the question is, should people work or should people with disability? I think the question is more about what do we how we classify what work is. Because I mean, even when I'm unable to do traditional I'm still working, whether I'm working at being an activist, I'm working at trying to organize people for some community initiative. I'm always working.
And that part's in the books. So like the professors, the psychology professors that only study work, they talk about that, but our systems don't want to have it. Our politicians don't want to have it. So even though they know it's there, they have all the documentation, they have all the studies, they have all the reports, they have everybody getting their PhD and this is their thesis.
Right.
The amount of people we have that study work that's not based on compensation, they have that information. They're not using that information.
Yeah, because like there's
a
lot of
it's from the Maslow hierarchy of needs. They know what our basic needs is. The amount of psychological people that study what does it take for a person to be sustainable on their basic level. Every time I do the emergency room assessment, that's the first thing they ask me. Are you sleeping? Are you eating? Can you get your clothes clean? That's what they ask me the very first thing before they realize, oh yeah, you're depressed, you're psychotic, you need sleeping pills. The first thing they ask me is my basic needs. And they know the basic needs are not coming from ODSP. The minute I tell people ODSP, they're like, oh, it's so horrible. Either they were on ODSP and they made sure they worked and got off ODSP completely, which is only 1 to 2% of the population that's on ODSP out of 500,000 cases. They know how many people are on it. They know how many people come off of it. They also know that the caseworkers do not give the people the information so they can use it to work in the way they want to. It took,
See,
it took
there's a lot of people.
It took 6 years for ODSP to recognize I'm self-employed. You know how many times I call the caseworker and say, hey, how to report my self-employment income? And they're like, oh, we don't know how to do that because they're not trained in it or they forgot to pay attention in their training.
But see, many like there's a lot of people that are not like they'll be working, right? And it's like kind of what Cassandra was saying. Like there's people that are volunteering, they're working, they're doing things, but they're not getting paid. And see, but I guess the government wants to make sure that people that are on ODSP or PWD or any other government programs.
CPP said if you volunteer too many hours, they cut your CPP. They know the other methods of working. The way that the CRA made the update about people that make money from social media influencers and gig economy workers. And then Wood Green finally made the tax credit for self-employment that make income under $50,000. They know all these things. They're not changing laws to update those things. They're not changing the way government views things, but the way they talk about things.
Well,
they'll say things to get people all riled up to vote for them and they drop off. They're going to drop off on the disability benefit and people are not prepared for that. They're waiting for this thing to come. And when it drops off, then what are we doing? There's no plan for that.
Yeah, they'll just claw it off.
I just wanted to move on to MJ.
Sure.
And then maybe after MJ speaks, I just wanted to drop in a quick comment as well after MJ.
Okay. Sounds good. Thanks.
Go ahead, MJ.
Minnie is right. I mean, the system's not going to change, for us. Right. And this is, the system is designed to benefit the system. It's not to benefit the people. And, a lot of us are not looking at what the system is, but what we would want it to be. And yes, Minnie gives us a whole cold hard reality check here and saying, and this is and what she's saying, this is fat. Let's be realistic. We're either, it's kind of like adapt or die is where we're at, right? Either we figure out how to adapt to this system and learn how to use it to our benefit, like what Minnie is doing, or we're going to sit here and keep pontificating and going around in circles. I mean, it's not, and I understand the pontificating is a good idea, but it comes to a point of where we have to go and say, let's take a closer look at what Minnie is doing to try to benefit herself and her situation, and how could we apply it to ourselves, and how can we go and bring this full scale to other disabled people that have motivation and means to get themselves out of this system and saying, enough is enough. I mean, I understand, pontificating, and I talk about UABI and all the rest of this stuff, but the reality is in this current system that we have, this is the way it is.
Yeah.
And the bottom line is either we adapt or die, right? Lead, follower, get out of the way, Thomas Paine, right? This is kind of where we're sitting in this situation, because yes, while we have hopes and dreams that they're going to give us more money, then they say, oh, we'll give you money over here, but we're going to claw it back over here. It comes us and takes us all the way back to what Minnie's been talking about over the last several episodes of, we need to go and start taking a look at finding that niche for us so we can walk away from this system instead of having to worry about it, and then helping other people to do the same. Because the current system in of itself is not sitting here going and wanting to help us. This is the problem that I find, is they don't. It's like, here's enough, here's your breadcrumbs, and if you can't survive on breadcrumbs, that's your problem, right? Yeah. So I just think that we need to go and also take a look at this from a realistic point of view of not what we hope the government would do, but what they're actually doing, and realizing and taking proper reaction to what they're doing, and then going and realizing, hey, we need to go and make a plan for ourselves to better our current situation. I think that's what we need to actually start discussing, because the health implications in of itself of sitting here worrying about and pontificating for the future of what could be leaves us wasting our time and energy of what we could be doing.
Plus, your brain doesn't know what happened. Like, it thinks both are true. So if you think the government is always going to be there and it's going to raise inflation or UBI, and you believe it so much, your brain doesn't know it's not happening, because you physically change your physiology to believe it, and then you're waiting on it. So you have a bigger letdown of it not happening when it doesn't happen. But if you actually focus on the things you can control that are in your control, regardless of who's in power or who voted for what, or what politician says who, or when they went on vacation to Jamaica, it really doesn't matter, because your household is taken care of. But if you're worried about this government said this, or they switched over here, or they did that, they're not feeding you. They're not in your house rubbing your back when you're sick. They're not there holding your hand when you get your prescriptions or whatever. They're not there. They're living their best lives. Their job is to be the poppy show for the country and whatever political party, and they go to the next country. Like, people worried about the Queen. I don't care that they're on vacation or on pause right now, but everyone's posting about them. They're not, everything they stole, they're not giving it back. They're still taking it. Nobody's calling them out on that to give back the stuff they stole. They're living their rich royal lives like everybody else, and we're worried about what they're doing. I don't care. I need to worry about, do I have food in my fridge? Do I have my next paycheck coming in? Can I pay my credit card bill? Can I go back to school? Can I do the things I need to do to sustain myself? A government is not going to help me do that. And if they do freaking get in, they come in with their little opinion, judging me for what I'm doing when they do not care.
Yeah, we have lots of hands up. I just wanted to jump in because basically what MJ was saying is basically a very quick comment that I was going to say is this whole thing strikes me as like a dog and pony show, right? Like MJ was saying, it's very self-serving. All of these income support programs, whether it be in Ontario or in Alberta or in BC, it's really set up to be self-serving for the government of the day, because, like the other day I spent, I spent 2 days doing that greatest hits package, basically, of all those pink unicorn moments. You know, my last video was all about, I think it was like 15 quick hits of like 15 episodes where I was talking about pink unicorns. I strung them all together. And when you see the whole body of, it's, what is it, a 23-minute video?
Yeah.
And so there's like 15 or 16 hits of all our guests, and I'm all talking about pink unicorns. And when you see it all stitched together, you realize like how perverse everything. It really is just a dog and pony show, like barking seals, you know, clown cars, the whole bit. And it's like, you know, because I mean, they're not concerned about truth. That's the thing that pisses me off the most. Nobody talks about truth. Like, you know, get your fucking head out of your ass and let's talk about truth, right? Nobody talks about like, you know, the governments are like effing people over on purpose, and people are dying on, you know, basically on purpose because the governments don't care. You know, and it's like, why doesn't the government care? If the governments don't care, I mean, like, piss or get off, like go away. You know.
Well, the thing is, Neil,
I want to find somebody that cares, like gives a shit, basically, right? And I know I'm spouting off, but it just pisses me off. It pisses me off.
Well, you know, when I see that, you know, like, you know, when I talked about the budget 2024, you know, BC, right? And then of course, after hearing about a meeting that came down, and I, you know, that was after, you know, and I was like, and then you had put that compilation together about the, you know, pink unicorns, and I thought about, you know, it was about clawbacks, and I thought, wow, if I would have known that information before, I would have then given that to you, and then you got to put that in there too, right? But you know, it's very unfortunate because now it's like whenever that Canada Disability Benefit does come out, if it does, I mean, right now, I mean, I just give everybody a basic income already. You know what I mean? Because I mean, they're just going to claw it off, right? Obviously, we know that the government's going to claw it off provincially. They don't want people to have the actual full benefit that they're supposed to be legally entitled to, a standard of living. I mean, it goes against the human rights, the CRPD. That's another thing we'll dive into another episode. But yeah, but I mean, it has a huge health aspect of it, because if people are living well below the poverty line, I mean, and really, like, what is the poverty line? I mean, you know, it's, I know we talked about that many times. I know Cassandra and everybody on the, you know, on our panel here, is what is the real number? You know what I mean? But it's the standard of living. Like, get everybody up to a standard of living, and then give them the tools that, hey, they want to be an entrepreneur, or they want to be able to do things for themselves. I mean, everyone has a gift of one way or another. I mean, some people love to do crafts, and they love making things. And for people, maybe some people like baking things. You know, some people like cooking. There's so many things that people can actually do. I mean, if they're volunteering, and maybe it's not paid employment, but the government will look at it as, well, they want to get everybody employed. I mean, obviously, that's the name of the game, right? That's what the government wants to do. But of course, who gets in the power, and then they say, well, this is our theme. This is what we're doing. I think giving everybody up to a standard, a level of living, and all that bureaucratic red tape that the government keeps saying, oh, well, you can't leave the province. You need, a day pass. You know, I always say that, you know, and that's so stupid. But yeah, anyway, I'm going to keep rambling on. So I'll pass the mic on to somebody else. It just pisses me off that
let's have Ellen speak, because he hasn't spoken for a while.
Yeah,
so, go ahead, Ellen.
Sorry, Ellen. I know we kind of suppressed you down.
Now you're in trouble. I've come to the conclusion that the benefit is just a carrot stick. It's just a carrot stick. And
I've been carrot or small one, Ellen.
I think they're just going to keep moving the goal line, and if they do bring it out, whether it's for a vote, for a popularity vote,
yes,
people like Daniel Smith and Doug Ford and Scott Moe are all just sitting there waiting to go.
Yep,
I'll take some of that. Yep, and I don't think the benefit's going to help anybody, so we need to assume that it's not in place. And if it comes out, bonus. If it doesn't, but I've been trying to teach myself AI as a photographer because I know that it's gonna swallow my industry up if I don't. It's already. I mean, people can take a photograph against a white wall and make it look like they were in the Dominican Republic. They can do headshots using an AI software.
Wow.
You can now through Adobe Photoshop in Lightroom select a bunch of photos and type in on an AI script for them to be edited by Adobe's AI to be properly exposed.
Oh my gosh.
So
Wow.
so the whole industry. So one of the things I want to look at is a service for. I want to focus mainly on a service for content creators, people that are already making content that want B-roll and stuff. So that I'm the camera guy behind the camera guy. So if someone's setting up a drone or whatever, or they're setting up a scene for an independent indie documentary or something, so I'm kind of like running their B-roll for them. But I got to find a way to make my photography niche work because I can't sit around and hope for my mental health as well as my physical health.
Well, you have a
To
network.
wait for wait to wait for ODSP to make sure I eat properly is just not.
Yeah, hope is not a plan, as they say. Yeah.
Yeah, if horses wishes were horses, right? But
Yeah.
I agree a lot with what Minnie's saying and what MJ is saying because there's no life raft, you know. We're in the water holding on to styrofoam, hoping that that isn't a shark fin.
30 seconds.
Metaphorically floating around like, oh, was
Let's
that a 13-pound shark? Oh, okay. How long was that one? You know?
let's
Um,
go. Oh, are you still okay? Go ahead.
yeah, so
Okay.
I think the point is that politicians are tone deaf. They're going to follow what they want. The Christian Freelands and the Jadming Singhs and all that. I think the only few ones that want to do something are people like Benita. Otherwise, I think if the NDP hired Benita to put in Jagmeet Singh's place, the NDP might have a chance, but that's here nor there.
No, and no, I would never, no,
It's,
politicians, no. I met Nikki Ward, I met the Liberal Party. I hate all of them, every
yeah,
one of them.
it's
And then
what I was saying is they're tone deaf, and it's the policies
it's not
that
that they're tone deaf. They really feel like we're making progress. And I'm like, no, you're
yeah.
not, because I'm suffering right now. Especially the one that was like hanging out from the grocery store. I looked at him like, what are you really doing in the office? Because they really think when they're in there doing their little meetings that they're making progress that helps us. And I'm like, no, because rent is still too high. I still can't get to a doctor to get my assessments. I like my doctor may fire me. All these things that they claim are making progress are actually getting worse. Because if my doctor drops off and I no longer have a doctor, then when I'm supposed to continue on my treatment? Because every time I go into the specialist, it's actually, oh, follow up with a family doctor. And I have to tell them, oh, I don't have one anymore. So now I'm looking at private clinics that are run by nurse practitioners that every time I go in is pay as you go.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they're making a campaign to bring in more doctors. If they train the doctors that came in from different countries from day one, we wouldn't have this problem.
Exactly, Minnie. Exactly. Like, yeah, thank you for saying that. But here's something I'm going to throw in here, and I want you guys' a kind of view on it. This is going to just not really blow your mind, but so there was a town hall meeting just recently, a phone in town hall meeting. I had got a email, and then I got a phone call, an automated phone call, saying, and this was a local town hall meeting in the community that I live in Victoria, British Columbia. So I got a phone call saying that your local member of parliament is going to be doing a local town hall meeting, and the leader of that party, Jagmeet Singh, is going to be with her doing a town hall meeting. And please, voice your concerns or comments, and we'll get you on live. So I got a call about 5 minutes before the hour, before 7:00 p.m. Local time, Pacific Standard Time, of getting into queue. So the moderator answered. It says press 3 star if you 3 and then star if you want to be on a queue. So the moderator came on and said, what's your name? Like, where are you calling from? And what would you like to talk to the guests that are on and the hosts? And I said, well, definitely about the health impacts of people living in legislated poverty in Canada. Because I said I'm in British Columbia, but this doesn't just affect me; it affects everybody that's on PWD assistance. I said, and it used to be a pension at one time, but that changed. But I said, whatever. I said, but the Canada Disability Benefit. I said, I want to know where Jagmeet Singh, the leader of the federal NDP, where he stands on that, and when is the ball going to get rolling? When's the money, like an intern amount, going to get out to help people now while they study the benefit until it's like kicking that can down the road, right? She goes, oh, that's a very good question. She says, yes, I know. I know that the party is really eager to get things going. So they put me in a queue. She goes, I'll put you in a queue. You can elaborate more, Brent. I waited an hour, all these phone calls, all these people calling in, and they couldn't get to me. They said, sorry, we ran out of time. You know why they ran out of time? They didn't want to take the call because it was about the Canada Disability Benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that as soon as I said the Canada Disability Benefit, they didn't want to deal with that. If I would have said a basic income or something like that, they would have been like, oh, well, I mean, I don't know. It just seemed to me, it just came across as my opinion, is that it just felt like that as soon as I said something that's going to better people's lives, I said, because it really will enhance people's lives. It gets them up to that, above that poverty level. They can now make decisions for themselves to better their lives. But they didn't want to go there on that. And that was really disappointing, actually.
Yeah. Let's go over to Tom, and then from Tom
I'll
over
do
to
a quick
Cassandra.
Who wants to make a bet they had like 2 or 3 queues all set up? So send these ones over to that. Oh, yeah, take that in this one.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, well, what's your view on that, Tom?
For me, it's like this whole thing. It's almost like this, what we're doing here, where it's like, it's like, I prefer awareness instead of surrender. I prefer to have like creating collective voice, and let's work together. And what things can we do for each other? And while also keeping the broad information of what's out there and what's possible, keeping that target in sight. Because like the subject of BI, like for me in the early days, like 4 years ago, like nobody, like you'd tell people basic income and they'd be like, what? Like it was basically plunged into darkness. So it was like trying to get awareness. Now it's awareness. Great. It's out there. And so it's like, but at the same time, I mean, yeah, it's fucking annoying because you don't want to be like, hey, we're working on it. Like it sucks. So it's like, you want to do where like, okay, the target's off there in the distance. Like that, I was using that telescope kind of image for a long time to kind of like, that's our target in the distance. Meanwhile, what can we do right now? Like how can we help each other? Like, creating, like when people talk about like when it comes to like there's online resources. Well, has anyone thought of like putting together, and I don't know how to do this personally, but I've been doing this with other things, but like creating a website of like, this is a link to this is a link to that, that's a link to this is a link to this. Like what things can we do in that kind of collective voice thing to help each other, like right now, outside of like government sucks. Yes, they do. They suck. Yeah. What can we do around them? Like, because it could go on forever, and I don't know. That's exactly. And while we also pound that into the ground.
Well, that's exactly it. That was one of my questions that I had in the town call the hall. And that's I was concerned about the clawbacks, and I think as soon as they heard the word clawbacks, it was like, okay, don't take this guy's call, because then I heard about the clawbacks that the current government doesn't want to commit to not clawing back. So it's that correlation. And I thought, okay, and then they put 2 and 2 together. But yeah, I mean, that's why we need a new system for all PWD, complete, brand new system. Like a floor of no less than whatever the dollar amount, like a basic income. And then they can be an entrepreneur. They can do whatever they want, whatever they're, basically, I mean, they could go and, I don't know, plant strawberries, or whatever. I mean, they could go and do anything they want, put their mind to whatever they want. Yeah.
Marriage for Guaranteed Income. Like, so it started with that one pilot, the one in Stockton, California, and it's just grown and grown and grown to the point where it's now receiving pushback from some. But the one thing about it is that like different mayors have gone like, I want to help this targeted community, I want to help this community, blah, blah, blah. And it's creating that momentum that's getting them to go, okay, well maybe we'll do that in the future. I don't know, but it's like 4 years ago, like there was nothing like that. So it's slowly it's as incremental as hell, and it's creating the backbone. Like there was a point made by Michelle Rempel, who I definitely am not politically aligned with. And she was like, well, if all my constituents want something, I'm its biggest fan. And it's kind of like that. Like basic income still has, I mean, like look at, if you don't believe me, check out what's going on over with UBI quotes on Facebook. Like there's still a lot of pushback, but there's also a lot of for as well.
So well, Tom, I wanted your opinion on something here before we pass on to one of our other panelists too. Is I mean, I know the senator. Well, I mean, I know Neil and I've had the senator on before. Senator Kim Pate and Lee Gazan, MP Lee Gazan. They're working on that GLBI. There's two different versions of like I mean the same thing, but the bill it's like bill C-233 and 3-2-3-3 or something like that. I always get that all mixed up. Who has which one, right? And I know I had them both on that one time. I said, I know you have that number and you have that number. What is it? But anyway, they're both working on that, and that's like the GLBI. Like it's like equivalent of like a senior's amount. But now you got the Liberals version that they're just kicking that can down the road, right? So
like Leah tried to do Motion 46 before, it got shot down instantly. And then Kim's background is like working with incarcerated women and people in minority situations, and like both of them have this kind of like fighting for underdogs background. So both of them are coming at it from that angle. Wanting it to be the it's the income tested up front, a livable amount, as opposed to what some versions are out there. Like Kim is. What's funny is that Kim has said she's literally created TikTok videos where it's like, basically GLBI and UBI, these are not the same thing, and everyone calls it UBI anyway. Like so, but it's just, I mean, the two of them are just like constantly going and going and going, and despite the pushback that they get, which is insane. And it wasn't Diane Bellemare, it's the other senator who actually stood up for Kim because of all the kind of information that was going on about like Kim wants to do this to Canada, and it's like, what?
I think there was one in where was it in Alberta? I think it was maybe Cassandra might know. I think there was. I remember hearing something about
there was a thing a long time ago called Ralph Bucks. There was like one time only or something like that.
Yeah,
and
it was. Yeah,
I remember Susan Abels of BIBC was like, yeah, we don't want to do Ralph Bucks.
But no, I just before I tell my little story briefly, what it was because there's royalties that come in, right, from all the oil and gas. Like we got foreign companies that are up extracting our resources, right?
Of course.
Right. And then we get royalties off of the sale of the resources. And usually it would go into general revenue or the Heritage Fund, or it's why we haven't needed a sales tax like other provinces have, because it's been able to provide fairly well. But what happened, because Ralph is famous for his austerity measures, which were absolutely brutal, and even conservatives didn't really like them. But when what happened was at the height of the last really big boom, when Ralph Klein was still in, it was right before he left politics. He was in a position where the Heritage Fund was ballooning, and it was literally, he had so much money. It's like, okay, well, what do I do with it? So he gave every man, woman, and child that lived in Alberta a royalty check, basically. And that's what the Ralph Bucks that they're talking about is he decided to. It was like Alaska has a thing where every citizen gets a royalty check annually, I believe. He only did it one time. I think the hope was that maybe if he had stuck around, or somebody else, one of his one of the people that followed him might have maybe kept it going, but they didn't, and so it fell to the wayside because he left politics shortly thereafter too. So,
they could have shared the wealth out to,
yeah.
to their citizens.
But I want to. There's a story I want to tell, and it's just based on things that everybody's said. Now I've told this story for other reasons, and I just want to put a caveat in, and please let me get through it because I want to get through it as quickly as possible. But I'm telling this story not to promote a particular political party. It's more to promote an idea and some inspiration into how differences are made and how a certain niche group can create something and can create political power. It was back in the 1930s. At the time, there was a really profound episode of human-made climate change happening in the Canadian prairies as well as the American Midwest. It was most famously called the Dust Bowls, which is why the 30s got named the Dirty 30s. And it was based on the way people were farming. The way they were farming was actually what created the climate change and the Dust Bowls, and they actually had to change the way they farm. So that was going on, but also the thing was going on was laborers, like regular workers. I mean, they were made to work like ridiculously long hours that are pretty much unheard of today with very little pay. Like some of the highest paying jobs today were being paid dirt money at the time to do some of the most dangerous and high risk jobs that had no safety standards. Farmers were also getting screwed a lot the way farmers today are getting screwed. Like we're about to experience a dust bowl on the prairies right now again, and which is another reason why I'm bringing it up. So the social and economic climate and political climate was very, very similar to we're kind of seeing a reoccurrence of it. And what happened was organized like trade unionists, like my great grandfather, sorry, he was a trade unionist. He was also a small farmer. He was also a multi-generational blacksmith, going back to Ireland, like far down the line in our family, going all the way back to Ireland. But he also made a big brick factory and designed a brick for the prairies. But at the time he was organizing. It was labor because of course he was a machinist as well, and he, like they were working in dangerous conditions. They weren't getting time off. They were barely able to put food on the table. And at the same time, like the farmers were getting screwed. They weren't getting enough for their product. The Dust Bowls and this episode of man-made climate change was making things dire, and the governments were actually doing things to make everything worse. And so what they did was they all got together, and all these small farming organizations and trade unionists from Manitoba to Saskatchewan to Alberta got together in Calgary, Alberta on August 1st, 1932, and they created a political party called, because the political parties, which would have been the Liberals and the Conservatives, weren't doing what they were supposed to do. And they said, well, why don't we create a political party? And they created a political party called the Cooperative Commonwealth Federation. And we all know one of the first leaders, they actually immediately were able to get elected 8 MPs, which they sent to Ottawa right away, and got elected provincially in Manitoba and Saskatchewan. And so they did that, and that them creating that political party, even though they never, they eventually changed their name in August 3rd, 1961. Again, both times in Calgary, Alberta, by the way. A lot of people don't know that. They changed their name to something we're all more familiar with, which is the NDP. and the thing about this isn't a story. I'm not telling you this story to promote the NDP. Because I'm not overly happy with the direction that it's gone. I'm telling this story because it's a story about how so these farmers and these trade unionists and these laborers got together because they weren't being treated fairly, much like we are feeling as the disability community is, we're putting a lot out and we're not getting a lot back. And so they formed a political organization and a political movement to get elected. And even though they never actually gained any, became government federally, they're actually the reason, and these are the first things they fought for, were WCB, employment insurance, the social programs that we, all right, yeah, they're terrible right now. They're not the way they should be, but we never even had them. They had this idea that we need these social programs like the ones that we all depend on. Now, we can argue the merits. That was the 1930s when that happened, and the world is a lot different now. But those programs are the same ones that we're talking about today. And what's happened is concessive governments arguably some of them were much better when they were first started than they are now, because they've been allowed to dwindle. They've been allowed not to keep up. But I think the point and the hope is that if a bunch of farmers and a bunch of trade unionists were to say, hey, we don't like what our government's doing, and form a political organization and leverage that to get social programs in, there's no reason why a group of people with disabilities and people living in poverty couldn't also form a political organization to leverage political power and get the programs that we need and the reform that we do need. That being said, I do agree with Minnie as well, and with MJ. We can't sit there and rely on governments to do. We do have to step out of ourselves and see what we can do to provide for ourselves individually, and what we can do to make our lives better without having, without worrying about what the government's going to do for us. But at the same time, I think we can also, while doing that, we can form a political movement of consciousness to get the kinds of reforms that we need. And I think that's an inspiring story, because if you think, as much as we bitch about the programs, we wouldn't have them if those farmers and those trade unionists had not formed their own party and created political power to get those changes implemented.
So you figure if that was well said.
Thank you very much on that story. That's very enlightening. And it really makes a lot of sense. Totally. And I echo that. Obviously, a lot of changes have to happen, but it comes from within us, right? We have to make the change happen, what we want to make happen, and if that means making our own party,
What's the name of the guy?
Well,
what's the guy's name in Montreal or Quebec? He's that very far right wing guy.
Maxime Bernier.
His name.
Maxime.
Yes.
Mad Max.
He's not far right, for God's sake. The level of ignorance.
It's a party, right? It depends on. It really depends on having a really good leader at the beginning, someone that's going to have common sense point of views. Not him. I'm saying as in the capacity of being a disabled party, you would need someone at the head of it that.
I think you're putting up roadblocks that you don't need. They didn't necessarily have when they started out, they didn't necessarily have a prolific leader that did it. It was actually the collective movement,
right?
It was the numbers of people that got together and said, this is what we want and this is what we're going to do. It wasn't that there was this one shining person. We hear about no, actually he came later. He came later. No. like Douglas was elected later after the formation of it. The formation of it came much before. Everybody hears about Douglas, and Douglas was out of Saskatchewan. The party was actually formed in Calgary, Alberta. And it was formed August 1st, 1932 in Calgary, Alberta, and they changed their name to NDP August 3rd, 1961 in Calgary, Alberta. So this
just to add on to that, like, do you know, I mean, I'm not going to be pointing fingers at which party caused this, but do you know, like, when it when it was formed approximately, about these so-called policies that we have right now that are keeping
right
people
off the get-go, because of
Yeah.
the climate at the time, like the climate for regular laborers and for farmers, the climate that they were facing and the hardships they were facing was where right from the beginning they were saying, no, we need social safety nets in place, that when we're having hard times, that there's something there that, you know, prevents us from losing the family farm, kind of thing, so to speak. And so right from the beginning, what they were doing was really forming a movement about making recreating our Canadian society to put in these social safety nets, not so people wouldn't work, but so when they got injured or they had to change employment or something happened, that there was a social safety net in place. And what we're talking about is a social safety net. And Tommy Douglas, yeah, did eventually get elected to be the leader of the party, and we all know what he did. But a lot of people think because of Tommy Douglas that the party, that's when the party was formed, and it was formed in Saskatchewan, and it wasn't. It was if you create a movement, and you got some core, and you can agree on some core principles about what that movement is going to do, like maybe you've got a specific thing you want to get done with revamping the entire healthcare system. Maybe you got something to do with the way disability and income supports or UBI, and you make those your core principles, and you build a movement around that in a there will be voices, and there will be voices in the leaders that will emerge from that. You don't have to look for that person. That person will emerge from within your organization, which is kind of how Tommy Douglas and later Dave Lewis was, the architect of what would the CCF's kind of mutation from the CCF into what's now the NDP. That Dave Lewis was the architect of that. So these voices and these personalities, they will come from within. You got to build the movement first, and not worry about, oh, do we have a good enough leader or a good enough speaker? No, build your principles, build your movement, build what you need, and those voices will emerge, and that you find that the movement will find best speaks for them. And I think that's,
maybe Neil could jump in on this part. I wonder who the architect was who designed the legislated poverty.
I just wanted to I saw that MJ was having fun with emojis, so I know we're getting close to the end of the show, so I wanted to allow for two final comments. One from MJ, and then the final comment to Minnie, and then we'll just wrap up the show from there. But so go ahead, MJ, and then we'll go to Minnie last.
Well, okay. One of the things I've been talking about is the idea of getting there's got to be at least a couple thousand of us or more that are disabled, that are sitting around the country with nothing better to do. And, the marijuana party's looking for members. They really need members to keep themselves going, but they also need a new leader. And they also need a new direction, because it's already legalized. It's not perfectly legalized, but whatever. It's there. Mission accomplished, guys. Rebrand. But they're sitting there languishing, and I'm sitting here thinking to myself, now, one, they have free membership. It's open. All you got to do is declare your membership. Let's get 1,000 of us or more to go and get this going. And let's start building a policy and ideas, some plan. I'm working on a platform, right? It's not perfect, right? I'm working on ideas. But I'm sitting here thinking, we've got a party that's languishing that we could pick up, sweep some dust off of it, and go and get somebody that would be the best leader to come up here and be the spokesman, as it were, and sell the ideas. And all I'm thinking here is, yes, the NDP, they were a stepping stone to some great ideas. And somehow they've fallen off and gotten lost along the way, and they took a wrong turn on the train tracks and went off that way. you know? So I'm sitting here thinking, you know, there's got to be enough of us. There's enough of us to sit here and say, hey, it's time to go and hit a reset button on this. And let's put ideas first that benefit the people in this country first. I'm sorry that there's problems in the rest of the world, but the hell with them. We have to sort ourselves out first. We have massive immigration by our liberal government who's creating homelessness from their immigration policies.
Mhm.
This is insanity. Insanity. The conservatives don't want to talk about it or touch it and say this is insanity, but you know, they're going to just keep it going. They always do. The NDP will do the same thing. I mean, I've sat here and I've listened to all of these things of all these parties for years, give us lip service with no solutions. And the problem I find is, you know, it's either time for lead, follow, or get out of the way. Either become the leaders and solve the problems, or just step aside, or get pushed aside, because that's how it works in a system where people have had enough. And a lot of people have had enough. You know, we've had the government throwing more crap on us. We're getting covered in pig shit every day. They raise the carbon tax on us, make the cost of living more expensive, raise the price of groceries, and all of these things. And none of these parties say, oh, you know, no, this is nonsense. This is absolute nonsense. No. Pierre Poilievre says we got to meet the Paris Accord, a fictional agreement based on nonsense, which could be, you know, and when you read the Paris Accord and you find out what really happened with it, basically everyone put in their own ideas and said, oh yeah, we're going to agree to meet all these things, but no one actually solves anything. You know, this is where we have these political parties constantly giving us lip service and gaslighting the ever-loving shit out of us. Like, you know, I was in an X space, and it was, you know, the gaslighting story is about the guy who goes and tells the wife to go and turn off the lights in the, you know, in the old days, you had the gas lights, right? So he would go back downstairs and relight them and tell her again, oh, you forgot to turn them off. And he'd continuously doing this. And this is what our government's doing to us.
Yeah.
Is we're being gaslighted with this whole idea that we're here for you and we're here to help you. But go yourself. You know, it's like they sit here and they give us nonsense. You know, I'm for helping the people here, not helping people around the world. You know, we have to help ourselves before we can help the world. And if we're not going to help ourselves and fix this nation, then we're just going and making the problems worse. And to me, I would like to really avoid a situation where we have really, really, really angry people that get very angry at the government and want to go and start picking up arms. I would like to solve the problem before we get there.
Yes.
And that's what we need to do, is get past this stupidity, give people freedom, give people a way out, get rid of ignoramus legislation that solves no problems but creates it, and get us to a solution. You know, here's a languishing party. All we got to do is just fill out the Elections Canada form and declare a membership. There you go. Become a member. Let's go and force a leadership review. Let's change the name. Let's build a new platform. Let's solve a problem. People are sick and tired of it.
And you could develop your own currency, Brent. You could have Brent Bucks.
Brent Bucks.
I was gonna say, what I love about MJ is I'll tell you, he is a true libertarian, and that he really believes in like, there's a lot of people calling themselves libertarians these days that are not libertarians, like Daniel Smith, Preston Manning, that don't really want to live and let live. And I just want to thank MJ for just being who he is.
You know, I just believe that the best thing that we can do is try to get the government out of our lives as much as possible so they can give us a fair chance and a fair shake to go and getting our lives together, instead of going and putting a thumb on us at every effing turn, you know, to go and say, oh, I'm sorry, you earn too much. Oh, you have too many assets. You can't do this. You can't do that. You can't own a home. You can't get married. You can't have kids. Go fuck yourself. Have a nice day. Go live on the street and go and do drugs. You know, it's the wonderful.
Sell them to you too.
You know, the wonderful thing about this system is it has the ability to change. If we, the people, stand up and say, we've had enough, we want to change.
Final comment to Minnie before Brent has his final comment. And maybe Tom is going to play us out. So we'll have Minnie, then Brent, and then Tom.
I've missed Tom playing us out.
Yeah.
So like I know Ontario. I read the policy of Ontario. I read memos of Ontario. So like how they made the Ontario Disability Act out of the Welfare Act, the Ontario Works program. The caseworkers, they weren't new people. There was a need of people on disability in Ontario Work, so they made another program for them. But it's still kept like how Ontario Works is for temporary people that are out of work that need to get back to work. That mission is still in ODSP.
Oh.
And then with ODSP, in the beginning of ODSP, you weren't allowed to make any income. If you did, 50%, half of your ODSP was gone. And then they added the $200 exemption in 2013. And then after 2013, 2023, they added the $1,000 exemption. And then they didn't separate disabled for life versus working and disabled. They're still lumped as one person. So great. Like I wanted to volunteer in the ODSP Action Coalition to help, but their agenda is to keep people on ODSP getting more access to ODSP. ODSP doesn't want you to get more access to them. It's already designed from 1997 that they want you to work. It's written, the words are there to work. And then we want to have more access. We want more recognition of the way we work. We want more, if we get married, I want to be able to have my 2-week vacation and not tell them I left the country for 2 weeks. All these things. It's kind of hard to do it when it started off of you're disabled, if you make money, we cut you off instantly. People still believe that old rule for before 2013. Then people still believe the rules from 1997, even though all those things have changed. So how are we supposed to come together, have a mission, have a political party, have a political leader, stay on track, not get sidetracked when all of us have a disability in some kind of processing information, executing information, all those things, when we already went into a system that's made by other people. Like the other people that made the rules, the policies of it, the lawyers, the accountants, Daily Food Bank was the worst thing to talk about the disability benefit because the disability lawyer, the insurance people, everybody that was there on that panel already knew you're going up a hill, you're going up the hill with the rock. The Greek mythology person who pushed the rock up the hill, boulder, and he'd come back down again. That's all we're doing. And even when I volunteered to fight against the sex worker rights to make decriminalization because Harper was in power. It blew up in our face. Now we're fighting to like Sex Worker International Day was yesterday. That's not changed. Now some other awareness month is happening. I think it's Cerebral Palsy Awareness Month. Again, we have all these awareness months. Exactly. We have all these awareness months for everybody's condition. No.
Well, because
but the way that the system is already set up in a way that it's a social safety net, yes. Ontario welfare was a social safety net. Then they recognized the need of people with a disability. Great. But they didn't change anything. They just promoted that person, even though they had a complete negative bias of people that were disabled, unable to work in welfare that moved over. And then if you had children, they looked at you like you're worthless for having children while you're on welfare. All those things are still there. People's beliefs are still in the system. Like they're still there. They still practice them. They still teach them to their children. It's in the school system. It's still there. We have to dissect everybody's belief system for generations and then start fresh. Like completely start fresh. I want it to happen, but
I've done it though.
I want it to happen more because we need it. Like we need to divide who's disabled for life and needs support from the government. Like my cousin is never going to be able to work. Like the way that he's intellectually disabled, he's purposely fed into a system that might take care of him and hope that hope he's not on the news because someone killed him. Or like my uncles who were migrant workers working on the farms who now have cancer. Like, and my grandmother coming from Jamaica to here to become a nurse and bringing my dad, if that didn't happen, I wouldn't be here. Like everything in my family is a political thing. And then we're hoping people are changing it when their generations didn't have that problem. So they think no one else has that problem when they don't even see who else has another problem.
Yeah.
So like, I really want to believe that we can change everything, but I've read so much documentation of the history of ODSP from 1997 up until now, and I don't see it happening. The records that they have, the documentation that they have, the Auditor General report and all his memos, they are not changing the system to make it easier for people.
We don't want to change ODSP. We want to get rid of ODSP and AISH and PWD and design a whole new system is what
I get we want to design a whole new system, but who's going to design it? Because remember, they made Ontario Works, they designed ODSP because they needed another system. ODSP should have been a separate system, but they didn't make it separate. They just split the group in half.
We can write, do you know, so one of the things I've learned recently is how to write policy resolutions. Policy resolutions are a stepping stone because policy resolutions can be then broken down. And if you look at how legislation is written, it's written very similarly. It's a little bit more legal.
Yeah,
and
ODSP Action Coalition does it. They're doing it right now. That they want the non-disabled person to not affect the person that's disabled's income. They're trying to do that right now.
Yeah, we can create, like, as a group, like, get people. There's people in the disability community that have that knowledge and expertise. We have lawyers, we have people of all kinds of, we could design our own piece of legislation and try to get, you know, have it sponsored or have it. So there is avenues. But I understand why you're discouraged. I'm just saying,
especially when you look at the
if
BC
I didn't
legislation.
know the history of this system, fine. I just work, make my money, and I'm gone, because I wanted to get involved because I was reading the policy, and then meeting Trevor, the chair of Action Coalition for ODSP, and then meeting John Stapleton. John Stapleton is just designed, stay poor. Here's what you get when you turn 65 to stay poor. So I'm like, that doesn't help me. Like it at all. Like, how are you going to tell me you're in the system? Too bad. Stay poor.
I'm 57 though too, and I'm looking at this disability benefit that they're talking about. By the time they get it out,
I'm going to be aged.
I'm going to be aged out of it, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. Yeah.
Exactly.
When you look at the legislation in BC, it looks like it was put together by
Daffy Duck.
Well, yeah, like a group of kids from grade 2 or something.
1,000 monkeys.
Yeah.
What is that sound?
I know, it's like fucking this thing. If I stop video.
Oh.
Right.
Oh, it's your camera.
I don't think the largest camera. I can't do it. Obviously, that's impossible. It's LOGI. Don't get them. They suck. Like,
no, I have Logitech. I make my money from Logitech. I make thousands and thousands of dollars from my Logitech.
I don't know why. Because, like, seriously, like, I got this one because I got this.
What model number is it?
Let's see. HD's 1080p.
Oh, that's it.
No. Okay, so like
there's 1080p.
There's like C920, there's C615, like there's 520, there's 320, there's 900, there's 5,000. Like, this is how many Logitechs I went through my entire career of making money.
1080p. That's all I got on it as well.
There's like 2 blue lights on the
I got
side.
it a while ago, and it started doing it a couple months ago. Yeah, it's got the 2 blue lights on the side.
So you have the C920. My C920 is like 10 years old. It doesn't do that. So try plug it in next time. Plug it into a different USB port to see if it still makes that noise.
Maybe, yeah.
Or a whole different computer.
It sounds cool though.
It may be that USB port.
It sounded like somebody hitting a bong really good there.
Yeah. If I want to be really nerdy, I could tether my Nikon to my computer and actually use a 4K or 8K mode camera with a $1,000 lens. But
yeah, I could. I'm
lazy and I like my iPad.
Anyways,
what's funny was like it was like 2 years ago, me and Cease got like, because the original laptop was like dying and it was terrible and had a cracked screen. So I was gonna upgrade this one, and then she got one as well, a cheaper one. But we upgraded to this like really overly expensive gaming one, and then it's like, it doesn't come with a camera? What? Like, everything else was amazing about it, but it's like no camera. So it's like, then okay.
I went and got this really amazing, what they call a gaming laptop with all the great graphics and everything. Yeah. And to my shock, I'm using an external webcam because it was absolutely The only thing bad about it was the worst webcam I've ever had on a
Laptops
computer
are
in my
always,
life.
it doesn't matter. It doesn't
Laptops
matter
are
if it's
terrible.
gaming
Well,
or
but
not.
I've never had
Yeah.
one this bad, is what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Oh.
Yeah.
The
I just wanted to
built-in
get one that was good.
the
like-
built-in webcam for a
Yeah.
laptop is always bad. Like, remember, I make thousands of dollars from a webcam. I can't
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
afford this little dot of a thing in my laptop. I need the
Yeah.
other one. This is my Logitech C920. It's fine. It's like a
Yeah.
decade old. So if it's making noise,
Yeah.
you have to plug it into another device or plug into a USB port. But then how old is the computer? Because
Well, it's brand new. It's pretty new. Yeah.
exactly,
Oh.
between the two devices, if one's
Yeah.
older than the other, it's not going to send the signal properly.
Yeah. Both are relatively new. Yeah.
I
So,
should actually try and play
Just
around with
don't,
my.
just don't lick the cable, Tom.
No, no.
I should.
It'll be really electrifying.
Anyway,
I sh-
Brent, you
Yeah.
can have final comment, and then we're going to blast off with Tom playing us
Okay.
out.
Sure. So an overview, I mean, obviously, if people don't have a standard means of living, their health becomes
Right. I
compromised.
forgot to,
Oh,
we
go ahead.
know that happiness stops at $70,000.
Okay.
We know
Okay.
that. We know like happiness doesn't get bigger after $70,000. But for some reason, we can't even get to basic needs.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah.
This is like, that's what baffles me. We know if your income is above $70,000, you're not more happier. But we
Yeah.
definitely
Oh.
know if it's lower, you're definitely miserable. And we
Yeah.
can't get somewhere to 35,000. Like, it's
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
If we had
Well,
$70,000, if we
That's the
had
thing, because
$70,000,
you know, it's like people have to have like or maybe not in a basic needs, but like a standard of living. And I mean, whatever, it's like the sky's the limit, right?
Yeah.
So you just give people what they need, and they can blossom in life. But these programs, obviously, they are deliberately made to suppress people's lives and their movement across the country. And so we need to make our own. We need to make our own system, our own party, our own system, because governments, we can't count on the governments to do it, because they obviously they've proven over and over, doesn't matter which party's in, hey, well, we have your back, or there's more to do, or we promise you. All those key words, right? They're like little key words, is like kicking the can down the road. It's like that's not working. So yeah, I mean, I want to thank everyone on the panel as usual for joining on the health part 2 series. Next week will be number 3 series, and we'll dive into more of the impacts on
and
how,
it might be John that's joining us.
Might be John next week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it'll be a lens on what he sees from a student's point of view, looking inward. So that's gonna be interesting. So I welcome everybody to join in next week, next
And then
Monday, March
again on Friday we have Mike Schreiner, but again,
Right? Yes.
it may or may not be. I might try the live thing. I might not. It just depends. But it's set up right now. It's set up to be a pre-recorded thing. So we'll see what happens.
Well,
Okay.
what you could do is, in my thought, is you keep the core group of people that you want in the show, and then you allow everyone else to ask questions from the chat. Problem solved.
Yep.
Okay, we can do that. All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in, and we're gonna leave the show with Tom Puxon playing us an outro. As usual, Tom is just really, he's great on his.
I'm a lot better on this thing when I'm in my band. But start with the verse by Woody Guthrie that always gets left out of songbooks. There was a high wall there. It tried to stop me. The sign was painted, said private property. But on the back side, it didn't say nothing. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From Buena Vista, from Vancouver
Island.
Arctic Circle, to the Great Lake waters. This land was made for you and me. This land was made for you and me. Now, the neat thing about this, this is actually the same book I had from grade 1, the ukulele. Woo!
Wow.
Oh yeah. I used to play the ukulele. That's why we had to play that
Okay,
one.
and then 5 seconds of if I had $70,000.
Yeah,
if I had
$70,000.
You actually need to burn it to the
Buy
ladies
me
too.
a mobile home.
yeah.
You guys just do it. I'll just
If I
but
had a
not a real
70
mobile home. That's cruel.
We'll get
Buy a
Tom.
I
you
could
can
buy
play
a
it.
box of Kellogg's, but not real Kellogg's because that's cruel.
And don't have it for dinner.
What that MGO corn in
Yeah.
it? Yeah.
Play the outro on that one, Tom. For the if I had $70,000.
I could get some Kellogg's.
If I had $70,000, if I had $70,000, I would buy a really good toaster.
A lot of breakfast cereal for dinner.
Lots
If I
of
had $70,000, buy some toast for that toaster.
But not some real toast because that's
Maybe the kind
cruel.
with like the bagel slots. If
I
I
buy
had
bagel.
$70,000, we wouldn't have to walk to the store. If I had $70,000, we'd take a limousine because it costs more. And so forth.
Okay,